Odds courtesy of BetOpenly, the best fight odds out there. Islam Makhachev, 23-1, taking on the 25-1 Alexander Volkanovski, moving up from 145. It's going to be a big dog in this one going up against Islam. A lot of people will be big underdogs against Islam. Maybe this is the best price you're going to get on many people, for Islam if he's facing anybody good or anybody challenging him. Minus 332 is maybe a decent price. Seems like it's a little bit of disrespect for Volkanovski, but I think it's kind of fair. What do you think?
Yeah, it's crazy that you got the number 1 and number 2 pound for pound guys fighting, and the line is this big, and the gap is that big in between the odds. I mean, minus 300 and something for a guy taking on pound for pound number 1 is insane to me. But when you dive deeper into it, obviously, I mean, Islam's a monster. He is going to be a lot bigger than Alexander Volkanovski. He's going to be taller, stronger. I mean, when you look at Islam, that frame, he's built exactly like Habib, it seems like, who was big for the division. Always a rough weight cut for those guys, but the strength, I think, is going to be the difference in this one. I just don't see Volkanovski being able to stuff the takedowns for 5 rounds. He might stuff a couple in the beginning, but as the fight goes on, even though Volkanovski has outstanding cardio, I think Islam's just going to be way too much. I don't see a world where Volkanovski upsets him here. Stranger things have happened in the UFC, and Islam was cracked and flatlined and dropped his first fight in the UFC, so you never know. But Islam's come a long way since then. The grappling is elite. The strength is out of this world for 155. And, I mean, you just look at what he did to Charles Oliveira, a submission specialist, and it just doesn't give me too much hope for Alexander Volkanovski on Saturday. I just can't get behind it right now. I want to. Any other time in the world, when you see Alexander Volkanovski at plus 300 something, I would throw my money on it. But in this fight, I just can't get myself to.
Yeah, it's hard to lay off that big of plus money on, a fighter that's never lost in the UFC and who I think is the featherweight greatest of all time. Really just dominant performances over his last 2. And then that one little slip up against Brian Ortega where he almost got submitted, but didn't, and ended up winning that fight in dominant fashion. I think it was 50-45 or 50-45 or 49-46 on most of the judges' scorecards. But if you look at his past opponents, I mean, Max Holloway, Chan Sung Jung, Brian Ortega, Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, those are his opponents in the past 4 years. None of those guys are really looking to take it to the ground. Ortega, yes, but he's more of a jiu-jitsu specialist and not necessarily good getting the fight to the ground with his wrestling. So a totally different animal we're dealing here with Islam Makhachev. And if you look at paths to victory, the obvious path to victory for Volkanovski would be to outpoint him for 5 rounds. I mean, he's probably not going to knock him out. His only knockout over the past 4 years is to Chan Sung Jung, Korean Zombie in round 4, which is an accumulation of damage. I don't think you're going to be able to land that many shots on Islam Makhachev. So you're basically asking Alexander Volkanovski to outpoint Islam Makhachev for 5 rounds, or at least 3 of the 5 rounds, and keep Islam Makhachev off him. And I just don't see that happening. That's really the only path to victory for him. I don't see him submitting him. I don't see him knocking him out. So when was the last time you had this power wrestler, Dagestani wrestler, that couldn't get his hands on a guy or couldn't hold a guy down? It just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. And so that ultimately takes me to Islam Makhachev. And honestly, at the odds on BetOpenly of minus 332, that doesn't even seem that bad. Like that path to victory for Volkanovski is so slim. It almost feels like Makhachev should be a bigger favorite, which we could come back to this and I could be completely wrong. And Volkanovski just goes out there and shocks the world. But I wouldn't be upset if Volkanovski goes out there and shocks the world, because I like the parity and I'm a huge Volkanovski fan. I just don't see any way that he can win this fight. He keeps saying that people are doubting him and he's going to come back and make all the doubters, pay for it. But I just don't see it. If it does happen, I'll be happy. But I just think Islam gets him to the ground, he's going to smother him. He's going to be bigger. Volkanovski might be able to, get out, but how many times is he going to be able to get out? How many times is he going to be able to sweep from the bottom, get back to his feet? And when he's on the feet, he's always going to be thinking about that takedown. He's always going to be having that in his head. Like, I can't overextend myself here. I need to be sharp in every facet on the feet so it doesn't hit the ground. Whereas Islam, he can play with the feet and then go for the takedown. He's not necessarily looking to defend so much. He's not looking to be so defensive that he has to cut something off from his opponent. So that just favors him so much in this fight. As far as method of victory for Islam, I almost think by KO is I want to go by KO because it's probably going to be a lot juicier, like a ground and pound finish. But Volk is a squirmer, man. I mean, he's smaller guy, so he's probably going to be able to squirm around and move around. If Islam wants to get the finish, I think it's going to be by submission, which will probably be the chalkier bet. And just for the fact that he's going to have to smother him and keep him close, hold on to him tightly, and find the victory that way. I do think he gets it done inside the distance, though. The guy's just insane.
Yeah, and I mean, I just keep going back to what he did to Charles Oliveira, a true, a 55er who has some of the best submission skills we've seen. And he submitted him no problem. There wasn't even really a fight from Charles once he got on top. And you look at Brian Ortega, had Volkanovski in two super dangerous situations, one on that guillotine, and Volkanovski was almost out. You could tell. I mean, his face was turning purple, and ended up getting out of it. But you go from Brian Ortega's squeeze and power to Islam's squeeze and power. It's just going to be different ballparks, and that's not a good thing if you're Alexander Volkanovski. So yeah, I don't know, man. I just think he's going to get surprised. I think you're going to see an element of surprise on his face once Islam gets a hold of him. I think he's going to realize that I'm in big trouble, and he's just going to be defensive all night. And it's just going to, either Islam, like you said, wins by submission inside the distance, or the whole fight's just going to be Islam on top of Alex, and Alex just surviving for the fight not to end. I really do. I want Alexander Volkanovski to win. I like him. Like you said, I think he's probably the featherweight GOAT, but I just don't think he gets this one done at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, but Islam's growing on me, man. That guy's insane. Like, how good he is. I will say this though. I mean, you look at like Islam's camp, like Khabib's camp. They come from the same camp, and they're always super like respectful and almost like overly. How do you say it? Like overly. Overly praising their opponents all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he's this, like, even with like Charles Oliveira, they're like, this guy's really good. Like Islam's gonna have to go out there. He'll go out there and win, but he's gonna have to be like super tight about it. It almost seems like they're writing Volk off. Like, this guy's just super small. Like, Islam's just gonna go out there and smash him. So does that mean that they're overlooking him? I don't know that it doesn't seem like they would overlook people. They're always in that way where they're praising their opponents so much that this time it's like, okay, maybe they're just like so confident that Islam's just going to roll through them that it could just happen. And I don't know. I would tend to believe Khabib in that kind of camp in most situations. It seems like they know what they're doing. So,
but Khabib no longer coaching him. Do you think that plays a factor? I mean, is that a factor at all?
Yeah, I don't think
he's disciplined enough. Yeah, I think he's a disciplined enough guy that just because Habib's leaving, he's not going to train any different, or he's not going to switch game plans or anything. But yeah, Islam's growing on me too. He's kind of a bro. I don't know if you saw the Nelk boys went over there and kicked it with him. Like, he's more of a laid back kick it with some buddies type of guy than Habib was. Habib seemed like spiritual, fighting, family, and that's it. But Islam seems like, he's a pretty cool dude. So he is growing on me as well.
Yeah, you train with a guy like Khabib for that long, like, you're never just going to like lose that work ethic or that discipline over a span of a few months if Khabib's not there. So I got last question for this fight. Do you think Khabib is in the building at all? Because he said Islam's not, or Khabib's not going to be in Islam's corner. Do you think he's going to be in attendance at all? Because I mean, I haven't seen him in much of the promotion, like the promotional videos, UFC
Yeah.
Countdown, embedded or anything. I haven't seen him at all. But is he going to be? You think he'll be in attendance? What would you set the odds at?
I'd set it at let's see, I'd say plus 175 he's there.
Okay.
And minus 225 he's not. I don't know. I think for him to walk away, he's got to get completely away. I think he's probably one of those guys, if he hangs around fighting long enough,
Right.
he would come back or he'd get that itch and it'd drive him crazy. I think if he's going to leave coaching and fighting, I think he just watches from home, and that's about as far as he can, or as close as he can get to it without, jumping right back in. So I'd say he's not there, especially if it's in Australia.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird though, not having Habib in Islam's corner.
Yeah. Is Hasbulla going to be there?
He's
got to.
be there. He's got to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hasbulla defeated folks, so I mean, he's got that for him.